All right. All right. Well, welcome, Matt Burns, writer and game designer on Black Site Studios' Don't Look Back. Exciting time for you guys right now.
Yeah, really, it's amazing.
Well, thanks for joining us. So I'm going to get right into some of the questions specifically around Don't Look Back. So first off, why pick the horror genre as Black Site Studios' first foray into the tabletop gaming world?
So it's kind of multi-part. Initially we were exploring a game called Anomaly, which was sort of
Okay.
like a test project for Ben and Connor, who own Black Site Studio, and I, to sort of have an opportunity to work together and just sort of see how that relationship would work out. And that is sort of based on like alien and space horror.
Right.
And that's like, well, Alien is my favorite movie, of one of my favorite movies of all time.
Good choice.
Favorite horror for sure. And so we were working on that and having fun with it. And then one night, Ben actually got a hold of me and he was like, "Hey, I absolutely love horror. Can you write up a horror game?" And I was like, "Sure. But like, what are some things you want to include? How do we want this game to look?" And he was like, "Well, especially with the gaming world the way it is with COVID, let's try and focus on something that somebody can play either solo or
Mm.
like cooperative if they have like their little pot of people." Um, and that's his favorite genre of just about anything is horror. So that was actually how it was born. Was just a quick message at like 9 o'clock at night, and then this was over the summer while I had off from school because I teach elementary, and I spent like the next 8 hours straight writing. And then by that morning, early in the morning, I sent him the first draft, and it was originally
Wow.
called Slasher, was its working name. So he was like, "Really, you did this already?" And I was like, "Yeah, dude, it was really fun, to get into that." So it was like an off the cuff, "Hey, this is what I enjoy. Can you do this?" And that's how it was born.
Very cool. Very cool. So Slasher became Don't Look Back.
Yes.
So how would you describe it to someone, I guess, who doesn't know anything about this game? How would you describe Don't Look Back?
So Don't Look Back, we wanted to create something that was more of an experience than per se like a hard and fast miniature skirmish game. So we wanted to lean into elements of storytelling. We wanted to have that tabletop skirmish experience. And then we also wanted it to feel like a natural bridge between like board games and also kind of the miniature game world. But for me, role playing and storytelling was like a huge part of it. So we really wanted to create this game that has a high narrative element to it,
Hmm.
where pieces of it are written intentionally, sort of loosely, for people to be able to create the moments and the cinematic experiences that they want on the table. Um, and really just allow people to either create their own moments or even go to films or graphic novels, and recreate stories or pieces of stories that they like and have fallen in love with, over time.
Very cool. Um, can you tell us a little bit about the Northwoods? This is the world you created for Don't Look
Yeah.
Back.
Yeah. So that was actually one of my favorite parts. Like immediately while I was writing the game, and that night, that initial rule set, like the dungeon master in me, the game master in me, was like, "Oh, this needs to have kind of its own story as well." So people are free to take it where they want, but for
Mm,
me, I needed to have sort of this world where these characters connect. So Northwood is its own sort of microcosm and kind of macrocosm all in one. So when the game starts, it's sort of in the woods. It's got that very kind of like a Camp Crystal Lake
right.
camping vibe to it. But then it expands out past the woods, and then you get into the city of Northwood. It has like its own suburbs. All the characters are intertwined through their stories about where they go to school, where the adults work and how they would interact with the different characters. And now that the game has come out and people seem to really be enjoying it, it's providing me more of an opportunity to be able to write some of that background.
Mhm.
Um, but it's kind of this place that's sort of time agnostic. So like one of the characters has daddy's phone, but at the same time, there's definitely some more modern elements to the game as well. Um, but it definitely has kind of a small world feel in the suburbs to, in the city, it feels a lot more metropolitan and modern, I guess, is sort of the way that it's going. But at the same time, it's this place where running into these killers and these things are sort of like legends that have been passed down. And it's almost like, well, yeah, there's Boxcar Willie. Like everybody's heard of Boxcar Willie. Like it's a story that's been passed down, but also at the same time, people know that he exists. Like
Yep.
he is an actual entity that's there. And there's really not a lot of dispute over whether that's a thing or not. And even one of the scenarios, it's about the kids running into the woods to steal his hat or his whistle. I mean, and
That's right.
hightail it out of there with it. So it's this world where people are basically coexisting with horror and terror kind of on a daily basis.
Very cool. So if you are a new player, specifically new to tabletop gaming, do you feel that this game is very new player friendly? And what can a new player expect when they start playing this game?
So I feel like actually the game might be a little bit more accessible to somebody who's new to tabletop than
Mhm.
somebody who's used to some of the more kind of like traditional tabletop games because of the narrative elements of it. I think it's a lot easier for somebody not so used to here's the specific way that you have to interact in this situation, and they can create these moments. We really wanted to create a game where somebody new to it or even experienced, when you get to a moment where you're not sure exactly what to do or how you want to handle the situation, that once you create that moment or that scene at the end of the game, it's not oh, well, if we had done it this way, it would basically retcon the whole game. We
Right.
want it to be, well, we did it this way, and that created this awesome moment.
Mhm.
So if you miss a rule or you misinterpret something or you choose to do something completely off the cuff, we encourage that. Like I want that to be a piece of the game, an element of it.
Very cool. Um, so this game is very scenario driven, as you mentioned.
Mhm.
So without getting into too much detail, what sort of mechanics did you come up with to drive that increasing tension as the game goes on and that horror film atmosphere?
So we have a mechanic in there called building tension. And as you're playing through the game, as it starts, the characters start heading out on whatever it is they're doing, looking for a lost friend, trying to steal Boxcar Willie's hat. And they head out into this environment or this area where they are. And then that's when they start to hear the sounds or the whispers or something rustling in the bushes. And as the game goes on, we use these fright tokens that are generated and placed on the board to sort of represent these things that go bump in the night. And as the game goes on, it's easier and easier for them to activate, and they are moving around more frequently until eventually one of them will reveal itself to be the killer. But until
Hmm.
that happens, you never quite know where it or he or she is going to be. And then the fright tokens themselves can create terror and slowly drive the characters insane just by constantly having to turn back or check something out or they hear something.
Um, so as a player, so you're essentially going to be playing the part of a survivor, right?
Mhm.
And I couldn't help but notice there's certain archetypes.
Yes.
Can
Yep.
you talk a little bit about what those playable characters are like, and did you model them after anything specifically or anyone specifically?
Yeah, so there's a little bit of yes to all of that. So we wanted to sort of capture the traditional tropes, the traditional archetypes that you're going to see in any kind of horror genre or medium. Um, but we wanted to do it in a way that was representative of who they are, and at the same time, with this idea of Northwood creating a specific character. Um, and they are created in the guise of people, but they're actually, most of them are people that I know, so not specifically movie characters, but they are people that I know in real life that I've sort of kind of designed some of, like, for the fluff and the story in the background. They are people that I know.
Any particular player favorite?
Well, so Seth is 100% a player-based favorite, and that was really, like, he was fun when we were playtesting. He really brought on his character through playtesting.
Right.
But then when the game launched, we really didn't right away expect or see that he would be the one, that everybody would have a lot of fun with.
And Seth is essentially the nerd or geek type archetype.
Yes. Yep.
The actually
Yes.
guy.
Well, actually,
Actually.
always correcting everybody.
All right, so let's get on to the juicy bits. So now
Sure.
on to the killers.
Yeah.
Please describe what a player would be up against, specifically in the core set, if they were to pick that up.
So one of the things that we were also really keen on, and when you were talking about kind of that atmosphere of building tension, one of the big mechanics in the game is that you actually conjure the killer when they first show up. So when you first go into a plot and you start working towards the objective or whatever it is that you want to be doing, until they show up, you don't know exactly who they are, what they do, or how they're going to interact with the players. And we have sort of a lot of the classics in there. We have your mutilated, tough killer who's just out to butcher everybody. We have the disjointed killer who basically is driving people insane by just how they move around the board in this kind of grotesque joint cracking and popping, head spinning sort of fashion. We have the familiar killer. So this could be, an uncle or even the milkman who you don't expect it when they first show up and they start attacking. The characters are actually drawn towards them. So there's a mechanic in there where players will start moving towards them, just your average Joe, and then they just snap and the murdering begins. And we have the mundane killer who's just like your average kind of psychopath out to kill everybody. Yes, your average psychopath. You're run of the mill. And then we have the ethereal killer who sort of captures the kind of your spirits and your bodiless haunts that will shriek and wail and chill people to the bone until they go insane and curl up in a ball.
Very cool. And I guess one of the mechanics in the game is, as you mentioned, if you want, you can make it so you actually don't know what killer you're going up until the time that they appear. I think that's fantastic. So was that intentional at the beginning, or were you looking to actually create killers for the scenarios?
So I guess we didn't even talk about that, but the other aspect of the game is that with each of the plots, there is a specific named killer designed to interact with the players within that plot. And those actually came later. So it was the intention right away to conjure the killer, so you don't know what you're up against. But then as we were sort of creating these backgrounds and this world and the places where these plots take place within Northwood, I very quickly found that I wanted to have the named people or these killers that the characters have heard about in their own town legends. And it just provides another piece of that narrative element. And as you said, like they're totally optional. You don't have to play with them, but they just offer a different replayability and a different interaction with the world that these characters are from.
Awesome. So the actual core set is completely jam-packed. So how did you land on the components that come in the box? And specifically, how did the decision come about to package some of the characters in old VHS tape boxes?
Originally, when we were creating Don't Look Back, it was going to be more of a like a bespoke product. We were originally thinking that, hey, it would be cool if we sold 30 of these. And the VHS cases, we wanted to have this touch, this feel of 80s, 90s horror. We had a lot of conversation about some of our favorite moments growing up, even when we were too young to really watch horror movies, but you still go to the video store and you walk through the horror aisle so that you
Yes.
can at least look at all the covers, or flip them over and read the blurb on the back and check out why they're R-rated, whatever it says under that. And that became for all of us, all three of us, Connor, Ben, and I, is sort of a like a distinct memory, like a piece of horror watching. So when we were looking at how we wanted to package stuff, we were like, well, I mean, VHS cases would be incredible. And then that would let us create that cover art, write the blurb on the back, and just sort of put a piece of what we really enjoyed kind of growing up into the game.
So it's the
Um,
blockbuster experience.
Yes, exactly the blockbuster experience. The VHS cases have been a trip, though. Actually, getting them as a product.
Sure. Yeah.
Ben and Connor were telling me that not too long ago, when they had to go back in and order more, the person from the VHS production factory was basically like, "Are these actually the numbers that you want? This wasn't a mistake, right? Because nobody orders VHS cases anymore." So that was a hoot. To even get them was kind of a challenge. They derailed one time, and I think it was New Mexico. The train derailed, and in my head,
Oh
there's like
no.
VHS cases like in the desert. And
Amazing.
the rest of the box became, what elements do you see frequently in movies that somebody who potentially already has terrain may not have on their own? So like we wanted to have the classic well in there, the storm doors that you could either kind of have on the cabin, or we've even played with them being like the underground bunker, like the 1950s fallout shelter entrance. And then the cabin was kind of like a must-have. Like we have to have this cabin for people to be in
The cabin in
and
the woods.
explore. Yes, cabin in the woods. Again, you have like your like the Camp Crystal Lake, like just this
Sure.
whole kind of a camping vibe. And the cabin changed shape a lot. So we use Tabletop Simulator to do quite a bit of our playtesting, because they're in Texas and I'm in Pennsylvania. So it's not we're very close, sort of a working relationship. And we were like using tiles, and then Ben a couple times would just like draw something and then put it on an element in the game. And with the things like the jump scare mechanic, we wanted to create an element that would take advantage of specific parts of the rules, so that players wouldn't just be in the woods; they could also be on an interior. And the way that I wrote Don't Look Back, again, because of this narrative element, was I wanted to make sure that I filled it with possibilities. So there are certain actions that people may, in their average game, never use. There's certainly a rating of, I don't want to say like more potent or more useful actions to ones that are just like extra. But if you want to create a specific scene, they're there to allow you to do that. So like 7 minutes in heaven,
Oh yeah.
knock and shout, and playing inside a building and outside also sort of rearranges what abilities and elements of the game are like more important. So when you play inside, you might spend some more time searching. You might be able to play with light a little bit more. The jump scares become a little bit more prominent. So the cabin design grew as we played, to make sure that there was just plenty of opportunities for characters to be moving around, potentially lose sight of the killer so that it's removed and then you don't know where it is, and then that it's going to come back out and move in to attack somebody. So the terrain pieces were to sort of supplement what people might already have, create a great base, and allow players to take advantage of different elements of the rule set.
Excellent. So let's talk about expansions. They have come fast and furiously, in my opinion. So you've already released 3 so far. So what new experiences would a player get with each of these new expansions?
So what we wanted to do with the first run of expansions is really show characters kind of the potential of where the game could go. And like you said, they are also designed to create new experiences. So specifically with the Greys, it offers a new visage. And at the same time, it also shows how Don't Look Back can work with having more than one killer on the table at a time. With Boxcar Willie, we wanted to show how certain scenarios, especially like the one where and the name is escaping me at the moment, but where they're in the house and they have to break out, how you can take the table and then create this atmosphere where the characters are really mostly playing just inside the cabin with this killer who is not going to retreat and savor the moment when he kills somebody. It's just going to be this gore fest and create an atmosphere. And then we have the Gourd Reaper, which was an opportunity to just have some fun with the holiday, but also to show the players that as a company, we also want to produce some extra add-ons. So he comes with like specific tokens that kind of work with his scenarios, but that can also be used as your points of interest in another game if you want, and just show everybody that there's a lot of room for us to grow and create different products that you haven't seen yet, and will change the game if you want to, outside of what's in the core experience.
Excellent. So that being said, what's on the horizon? What's coming up for Don't Look Back that you could talk about?
So actually, there's some really cool things. Our first specific character expansion is going to be coming out very soon, and it's going to have 4 new playable characters. 2 of them we played with in a stream recently. So we have Seth's sister, Rachel Newton, who's the president of the AV Club. So she has some cool interactions if you play specifically with her and Seth, but in general, she has her own mojo and her own way of working with light tokens is kind of her big thing. And then we have Cat Grifter, who's the skate rat, and she can move a little bit faster when she's outside and using her skateboard. And her big thing actually is that she can do the search action as a quick action. So she does that fast. So she's really good at just kind of nabbing stuff on the run. And then we've got 2 more characters that will be in there. So that will be coming out pretty soon. There's actually something that I'm going to drop in the group, specifically actually from your thread where you were talking about kind of the persistency of the killer, like how persistent they are.
Yes.
And when we designed the killer, so I wanted to create these moments where the killer doesn't always go after the same person. I love that moment where maybe he's injured somebody and then hears somebody else and takes off after them to go after them. But we're going to be creating, it's something that we're working on with our play testers now, but we're going to be dropping the group really soon. And it's called Tireless, which is essentially a third trait that you can either add on to a killer that already exists. And it's a player choice. So it doesn't have to be rolled. You can just decide that you want to, and it will make the killer very persistent, not going to change targets easily, and also sort of an amped up version of Patient, which is another killer trait where they can ignore supporting characters. Well, this with Tireless, they also have an opportunity to ignore the distract action too.
Wow. Making it tougher.
So one of the things that we want to do is also offer this kind of stuff that we can put out to the players as well is like we are very eager to hear what you guys all have to say, and it creates these opportunities to just plop these like little assets into the group to again create the experience that you want very very easily, as an optional rule that you can pull in or not.
Fantastic. Well, I appreciate your time, Matt. And everybody out there, check out Don't Look Back by Black Site Studios.